is essential to the functioning of a free society. In what ways have these rights been of particular importance to women and minorities? Although First Amendment rights are considered essential in a constitutional democracy, it is sometimes argued that these rights must be limited. Under what circumstances, if any, do you think limitations are justified? Explain your answer. You may begin.
The Supreme Court declared in Texas v. Jones, if there's a bedrock principle underlying the First Amendment, it is that the government may not prohibit the expression of an idea simply because society finds the idea itself offensive or disagreeable. The principles of the First Amendment, the principles of freedom of religion, press, speech, and assembly stated in the First Amendment have granted protection to the rights of citizens to portray their ideas, no matter how others may view them. These rights are essential because they have contributed to the formation of political ideologies and government legislation.
As Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes stated, the ultimate good desired is better reached by free trade in ideas. The best test of truth is the power of thought to get itself accepted in the competition of the market. As the framers established First Amendment rights, they looked back in history to perfect it. Freedom of religion established religious equality in the U.S. and ensured separation of church and state. Consequently, it also protected the U.S. from damaging religious conflicts, such as the French revocation of the Edict of Nantes, which tore apart France into two battling religious factions.
The protection of the freedom of speech and the freedom of press was equally important in securing civil liberties. As stated by the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals, recognizing that the right to differ is the centerpiece of our First Amendment freedoms, a government cannot mandate by fiat a feeling of unity in its citizens. In order for a free society to exist, the framers knew the ability of citizens to address grievances to their government without violent means was essential. As James Madison stated, a people who mean to be their own governors must arm themselves with power which knowledge gives. The protection of speech and press enables people to properly educate themselves in order to govern one another.
With a knowledge of events through adverse grievances, the people have the ultimate say in checking government actions. As the U.S. government sought to go to war with Syria in 2013, the people showed massive opposition to this action. With widespread protests and re-elections on the line, the people were able to prevent war in Syria. These actions taken by the people demonstrate the importance the First Amendment has in ensuring the needs of the people are being protected. First Amendment rights are important to all groups in society, but over the course of history, it has become clear that these rights are of particular importance to women and minorities. Without the right to petition, assemble, and speak freely, it would be nearly impossible for minorities to express their views.
The right to petition was important for these groups to gain their civil liberties, as seen through the actions of many great civil rights activists such as W.E.B. Du Bois, Malcolm X, and Cesar Chavez. The Great March on Washington, for example, demonstrated how these rights worked for minorities. Not only was it representative of the right to petition peacefully, but Martin Luther King Jr.'s famous "I Have a Dream" oration would not have been possible without his freedom of speech rights. Another case in which the First Amendment helped aid the progress of minorities was the Equal Educational Opportunity Act of 1974, which allowed for access to bilingual education, a milestone in rights for those who speak foreign languages. Similarly, the Seneca Falls Conventions that stemmed from the Second Great Awakening showed these rights were essential to women's rights as well.
Without the right to assemble, this convention would not have existed. The Seneca Falls Convention has been viewed as a major stepping stone to equal gender rights. Without the First Amendment, the convention could not have dispersed and stopped women's rights from happening. Women's rights were pursued further through the use of this amendment by figures such as Susan B. Anthony, Jane Addams, and others, in the formulation of groups such as the National American Women's Suffrage Association and the National Women's Trade Union League. These institutions gave women opportunities to express their rights to assemble in order to receive better pay, civil liberties, and the right to vote in the 19th Amendment.
Without the rights guaranteed in the First Amendment, minorities and women would be unable to garner new rights at all. Whether to protect the good of the people or to limit others from expressing themselves, the First Amendment rights have all been limited in justifiable times in history. The key component to limitations is time, place, and manner, imminent to the national security of the United States. The First Amendment is not regulating speech, but rather conduct. In Morse v. Frederick, a student held up a banner displaying the phrase "Bomb hits for Jesus." It was determined that his subsequent suspicion did not infringe on his First Amendment rights because of time, place, and manner.
As he was under the supervision of the school, his conduct was out of line in promoting illegal drug use. First Amendment rights are limited in order to preserve the liberty of the United States. The regulation is not about managing ideas, it is more about protecting democracy. Furthermore, First Amendment rights can be limited in times of war and when the government is threatened.
Unpopular ideas that have been suppressed during times of war and increasing tensions on topics such as the limitation of abolitionist literature preceding the Civil War. Congress made it a federal offense to send abolitionist material through the mail in order to prevent slavery activists from launching out against the government. Congress wanted to keep the southern states from seceding from the Union, so abolitionist rights to freedom of press were restricted in order to preserve the state of the Union.
The First Amendment is the embodiment that individuals have the right to voice their opinion and concern for both personal benefit and the prosperity of the government. Minorities and women have demonstrated this value through their pursuit of liberties and civil equality. Without the rights expressed in the First Amendment, our free society would be in a state of stagnation and discord, and with these rights, free society can flourish. As Justice Marshall proclaimed, the First Amendment serves not only the needs of the polity, but also those of the human spirit, a spirit that demands self-expression.